In this lesson, we will discuss the intervals called half steps and whole steps. First, let's define what the term interval means. An interval is the distance between two notes. The easiest way to see intervals is by looking at a piano. Let's start with an interval called the half step. This is the distance between two keys that are right next to each other. It doesn't matter if the key is white or black, as long as they are right next to each other. That means they are a half step apart. You may also hear half steps referred to as semitones or minor seconds. Let's look at a few half steps on this piano. C to C sharp, for instance, this is a half step because C and C sharp are right next to each other. Careful here though, don't mistake C and D for a half step. Take note that there is a black key separating them. Similarly, A to A sharp is a half step as well. G flat and G are also a half step apart, as are E and F. Notice that since there is no black key between E and F, they qualify as a half step interval as well. Now that we have looked at half steps, let's discuss whole steps. A whole step is simply the distance equal to two half steps. So, C to D is a whole step because we move two half steps to get there. In other words, we skip one key, C sharp in this case. G to A is also a whole step because we skip the G sharp to get there. C sharp to D sharp is a whole step as well because we skip D. Look at E and F sharp. This is a whole step because we have to skip F to get there. And similarly, E flat to F is also a whole step because we have to skip E. Lastly, let's look at a few special accidentals. Reminder that accidental is simply a generic term for any sharp or flat or natural. We know that flats lower a note and sharps raise a note higher. Now we can be more specific. Flats lower a note by a single half step, and conversely, sharps raise a note by a half step. So, when C gets a sharp added to it, it moves up the scale to C sharp, which is a half step higher. In that same method, if A gets a flat added to it, that moves down a half step to A flat. Now, let's take a look at what happens when E becomes sharp. We go up a half step, but there's no black key. So, E sharp is, in fact, the same note as F. And you can see and infer that F flat is the same note as E because when we go down a half step to F, we land on E. The same principle is true with B sharp and C flat. B sharp is the same as C natural, and C flat is the same as B natural. This lesson should have given you a good handle on these intervals called half steps and whole steps.